What if the place you trusted most started turning against you? The city outside Laura's window buzzed faintly with late-night traffic. But inside her apartment, the silence pressed down like a physical weight. Her desk lamp flickered once before stabilizing, casting a dull yellow glow across stacks of unfinished reports. She rubbed her eyes, exhausted, but pushed herself to keep working. The deadlines were closing in, and distraction was a luxury she couldn't afford. That was when she noticed it, her laptop, calendar normally filled with predictable meetings. Work reminders and appointments had shifted. A new event pulsed in the digital glow. No title, no participants. Just one word, obey. She frowned, convinced she must have clicked something by mistake. She deleted the entry, saved, and refreshed the page. It returned instantly. She tried again. The same result. The event blinked in place like a stubborn ghost, time-stamped for midnight. Laura leaned back in her chair, uneasy. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe her company's system was acting up. But as she stared at the screen, she realized her heart was beating faster, her mouth dry. She checked the locks on her phone, her other devices, her Wi-Fi connection. Everything seemed normal. Still, she couldn't shake the sensation that this was not a malfunction. It was a message. Over the next few days, it grew worse. New events kept appearing in her calendar. Always the same word, obey, always set at moments when she felt observed. Tuesday afternoon, after she sensed a man staring at her on the bus. A new entry appeared for 2:47 p.m., the exact time she had looked up and caught his gaze. Wednesday night, walking home past a deserted alley, her phone vibrated with a calendar notification, obey. 9:12 p.m., the time she had quickened her pace, her apartment. Once her refuge, no longer felt like her own. She'd place her keys on the counter, only to find them later on the table. A book she left half opened on her bed would be closed, its bookmark removed. Once, she returned home to discover her bathroom mirror slightly tilted, as if someone had adjusted it to catch a better angle of her face. Sleep became another enemy. She dreamed of endless corridors stretching out into the dark, each door painted with the same black letters, obey. When she tried to open one, it wouldn't budge. When she tried to turn away, the letters grew larger, filling her vision, pressing into her skull. She would wake drenched in sweat, her muscles sore, as though she had been walking for hours in her sleep. Laura told herself she was overworked, that her mind was inventing connections where none existed. Yet the evidence was undeniable. At work, her files had been rearranged in her system. Entire reports she had never written appeared under her name. She started receiving anonymous messages in her inbox, each one blank except for a single attachment, screenshots of her own apartment interior, taken from impossible angles. The more she tried to resist, the stronger the presence became. Whenever she ignored a command in her calendar, she felt punished in subtle ways. Her lights would flicker uncontrollably, her laptop would freeze, her phone would drain its battery from full to zero within minutes. Once, the elevator in her building stopped between floors, trapping her in the dark for 40 minutes. The only illumination was her phone's glow and the calendar notification that appeared, obey. By the end of the week, Laura was unraveling. She jumped at every sound, flinched at her reflection, and avoided sleep as much as possible. She unplugged every device, even shut off her Wi-Fi router. But the messages continued, appearing on blank walls in faint digital projections. She couldn't explain, and the worst part was not the intrusion itself. but the creeping realization that a part of her, some deep, buried instinct, was already listening. When she saw the word obey, her body tensed as if awaiting instruction. Her breath shortened, her hands stilled, her thoughts seemed to pause. Something or someone was scripting her life, and she was no longer sure she had the strength to resist. Laura's mornings became unbearable. Every routine, task, brushing her teeth, making coffee, getting dressed, was shadowed by a sense of surveillance. She felt as though invisible eyes followed each movement, analyzing, recording, waiting. The smallest mistake, like leaving her mug on the counter instead of the sink, filled her with dread. She half expected to find the word obey scrawled across the ceramic when she turned back. The commands grew bolder. Her phone buzzed with reminders that weren't hers. Leave at 8:37. Sit in the third row of the bus. Do not speak to anyone. Each instruction appeared as if an external force had full control of her calendar. She tried to resist, once deliberately leaving 10 minutes earlier than the message advised. The consequences were immediate. That morning, a car swerved onto the sidewalk just meters from where she usually walked. The driver's face was hidden by tinted glass, but Laura's pulse spiked with certainty. Had she followed the command, she would have avoided the near miss. Or had her disobedience caused it? Her world narrowed into a cycle of paranoia. At the office, colleagues noticed her distraction. Her manager asked if she was ill, but she couldn't bring herself to explain. What would she say? That her own devices were turning against her. That some unseen intelligence was dictating her every step. She nodded mutely, offering the excuse of exhaustion, and retreated further into herself. Every evening, her apartment seemed more hostile. The walls hummed with a faint vibration, as though carrying signals she couldn't hear. Polaroids began appearing on her kitchen table, grainy images of herself, captured in her own rooms. One showed her asleep on the couch, another standing in the bathroom doorway. The angles suggested a hidden camera, but she had torn apart every inch of the apartment without finding anything. She tried staying elsewhere, a hotel for 2 nights, but the commands followed her there. The calendar notifications still arrived. The photos still appeared. On the second night, she awoke in the unfamiliar bed to find another Polaroid on the nightstand. Her face, twisted in sleep, taken moments before she awoke. Sleep deprivation broke her resolve. Her thoughts slowed, her speech fragmented. She began moving through her day on autopilot, following the instructions without question. Sit here, walk there, don't look up, obey. And with each compliance, she felt a dark relief. The weight of choice lifted, replaced with a numbing certainty. For brief moments, she almost welcomed the control. At least when she obeyed, the world around her remained stable. No accidents, no flickering lights, no punishment. But late one night, as she stared at the newest photo-an image of her standing at her desk, her back to the camera, Laura realized the most horrifying truth. The presence wasn't just watching, it was learning. The following week blurred into a sequence of controlled movements, each one dictated by the relentless stream of silent instructions. Laura was no longer shocked when her phone buzzed at exact intervals. She didn't resist. She didn't argue. She followed. Her resistance had decayed into something closer to ritual obedience. Yet with that obedience came cracks in her perception. She began noticing patterns that shouldn't exist. The same man on the bus every morning, always sitting 2 rows ahead, never turning his head. The same woman entering the cafe at precisely 9:12, ordering the same coffee, with the same mechanical tone. Even the birds outside her office window seemed synchronized, flocking and scattering at impossible precision. It was as though the entire world was a stage, and everyone around her was an actor reading from the same script. The terrifying thought took root. Perhaps it wasn't just she being controlled. Perhaps everyone was. The new Polaroids confirmed it. They no longer only showed Laura. Now, strangers appeared, faces she recognized from the bus, the cafe, the office. Each photo captured them in positions that mirrored her own. A man looking down at his phone just as she did. A woman holding her coffee at the same angle Laura held hers. A collective choreography, like an entire city dancing to an invisible conductor. One night, she sat hunched over the growing pile of photos, arranging them across her living room floor. From above, the images formed an eerie mosaic, a web of repetition and symmetry. The realization struck with the force of a nightmare. The Polaroids were documenting not her isolation, but her assimilation. She wasn't alone in this experiment. She was one fragment of something vast, an endless network of synchronized lives. And then came the voice, not spoken aloud, but etched into her thoughts like a shadow. You are adapting. You are aligning. You are becoming what we need. The voice was neither male nor female, neither kind nor cruel. It was flat, mechanical, inevitable. She pressed her hands against her ears, but there was no shutting it out. The words pulsed from within, reverberating in her skull. That night she dreamed, or perhaps did not dream, that she stood in an infinite grid of mirrors. In every reflection, thousands of Lauras stared back at her, each moving in precise unison, a fractured chorus of herself. Their eyes glowed with the same pale light. Their lips moved in the same rhythm. Obey, obey, obey. She awoke trembling, drenched in sweat, only to find a new Polaroid waiting at her bedside. This one was different. It wasn't her. It wasn't the strangers. It was a photograph of the grid, the mirrors, the other Lauras. Proof that what she saw wasn't just a dream. Laura no longer trusted the boundary between reality and hallucination. The city itself felt hollow, as if its architecture were nothing more than painted scenery on a stage. Skyscrapers loomed like cardboard props, streets stretched in sterile symmetry, and every passing face seemed drained of individuality. Her movements were no longer her own. She felt the pull at her spine, like invisible threads guiding her posture, her stride, even the tilt of her head. The whispers in her mind had grown constant. They did not instruct her. Now they narrated her, as if she were merely a character in someone else's story at work. She noticed her colleagues' conversations faltering into silence whenever she entered the room. Their eyes darted to her, then away, like marionettes awaiting cue. In the reflection of her office window, she caught something impossible. The rows of desks behind her were filled not with co-workers, but with reflections of herself, dozens of Lauras typing in perfect synchronization. When she spun around, the illusion snapped back to normal, but the unease lingered. The Polaroids escalated. Now, each one arrived before the event occurred. She would find a photo of herself at a cafe, only to walk into the cafe hours later and sit in the exact position shown. A picture of her on a street corner, head tilted to the right hours later. She'd find herself there, head tilting without command. The photographs were not documenting her, they were dictating her. One evening, she tried to resist. She found a Polaroid taped to her door, herself standing in the subway station at midnight. Instead of going, She locked her door and curled into bed, determined to break free. But as the clock struck 12, her body betrayed her. Her legs moved on their own, dragging her to the subway, her hands trembling as if pulled by invisible magnets. When she arrived, she saw herself exactly as the photo had foretold, standing in the deserted station, eyes vacant, expression hollow. Then the final Polaroid came. It did not show a place, it did not show her. It showed a chair, a single, metal chair in a dark room, illuminated by a sterile overhead light. The image was grainy, but on the back, scrawled in red ink, were 4 words: "We are almost ready." The storm inside his mind finally broke. The ticking clock no longer echoed, it screamed, each second like a hammer against his skull. In the mirror's reflection, he saw not his face, but the fractured pieces of every choice he had tried to bury. The apartment walls seemed to breathe, closing in with the weight of unspoken truths. He stumbled toward the window, searching for relief in the neon haze of the city. Cars moved below, ordinary lives unfolding, while his own world collapsed in silence. The air felt heavy, charged, as though the room itself knew what he had done. The phone lay on the table, glowing faintly. His trembling fingers hovered above the screen. One call could end the silence, bring the truth into the open, but it could also unravel him completely. If he stayed quiet, the lie would continue to rot him from the inside. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. A storm was coming, both in the world and within him. The question lingered like a shadow. Was he the victim of his mind, or had he willingly become its prisoner? And in that final moment, he realized there was no escape, only the choice of how the truth would consume him.